Hi, folks. Jaime here, CEO and co-founder of Codacy and also makers of Verity. Today I'm here with Erik Jost, who's also Chief Digital AI Strategist for Blackbox and very insightful of many of the new AI trends that we're seeing across our customer base and across the industry. So today I have a number of questions that we're going to be asking. And I think the first question I have for you, Erik, is to walk me through IntelliPact's agent pipeline end to end. So things such as the backlog groomer that you guys built, the harnesses and the tools that you're using, features, competing models. So give us a taste of what agentic workflows you have running.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here, and I appreciate the partnership. And must say, I love the tooling, and it's been extremely helpful. IntelliPact as a platform is built for large enterprises and built at scale. We run it in, large scale hyperscalers, Azure, AWS, and I think the common trend that we're seeing, right, is there's a lot of what you could call forward deployed engineered built apps. I don't really love the word vibe coded, but you could call it vibe coded. And IntelliPact started that way, and it was a simple problem we were trying to solve for our customers, which was how do we take strategic initiatives and outcomes that businesses are measured on, our clients are measured on at the board level, at the C-suite level, and derive the value that technology and other investments are contributing or detracting from those investments, or strategy adjustments that the business is making. It doesn't necessarily have to be an investment. And we built IntelliPact, started with Cursor and kind of learned as we went. And as we integrated Codacy, started seeing the mess we had created, and really started to burn down that mess. And as we did that, and agents became more accessible in an autonomous way, we started driving automation. And one of the core beliefs that we have is, given the power of AI code generation, and guarded intelligence, you can really agentify and drive enterprise-grade delivery of outcomes with a very small team of smart people and good tools. And so that's what we started to do. Our stack is, I'll say, relatively simplistic in a way, right? CI/CD is run in GitHub. Development is primarily Claude Code and OpenAI Codex. And like I mentioned, we do all of our hosting in enterprise-grade deployments. So that's all pretty much Azure, but there's other stuff there. And we started with, basic GitHub issues and things like that, moved to linear. I think that was a little more agentic friendly, I would say. And once we did that, the first thing we started to do was groom the backlog, and take advantage of some of the features in linear. And so we have an agent that every day goes in and looks at the backlog, looks at the priorities, aligns things where they should be, sets dependencies, looks at the code base, that type of thing. And then we have, I think, about 8 different agents that run right now in the loop. And that agent, once the backlog is groomed, sets it in a ready for plan mode. And depending on the type of issue, it will delegate to one of 2 models, right? If it's feature design or net new type of capabilities, we delegate to Claude for planning. If it's bug fixing, we delegate to Codex. And same with tests, adding tests or regression testing. We delegate those to Codex as well. It seems to, at least from our experience, do better in that harness. And Claude is a little more robust in the way it thinks about feature development. And so then both of those platforms have agents, and when it sees something that goes into, ready for Claude plan, Claude will go in and it will go through its normal planning cycle. We use some of the, open source tools like superpowers and other things for more robust planning. And then once plan's complete from either agent, it flips to the other one to review it. So if Codex does a plan, then Claude will review it. If Claude does a plan, Codex will review it. Once that's been verified, and there's no blockers, right? So if it needs some type of access or something that needs to be delegated for human decision or product design, those are flagged for me or the team to review. And then I'll go into ready to implement. And then whichever agent's supposed to do that implementation will go through, do the implementation, and then push a PR. And from PR, it will then go through a PR loop. And in our PRs, we have multiple tools doing PR reviews. So we have both Claude and Codex, GitHub Copilot, as well as Codacy, and CodeRabbit as well. And then we have a number of gates that we have to go through around security and dependency checking and all that type of stuff. And we have pretty strict gate process, standard stuff in GitHub, but all conversations must be resolved. And in the PR loop, one of the things that we started implementing was any time that there was something that was repeatable, new rules had to be implemented back into the repo. So whether that was in lint, in our CLI, in our validation tooling, or in our agent.md or CLAUDE.md files, those things happen as well. So every mistake that was made, there's a hardening level that goes with it. And we continue to drive that improvement. And as we've done that, we've seen, our ability to go faster because the loop gains more and more trust. The other part of that loop, and I'll call it the meta level of that loop, is we have two agents that run. One runs daily and one runs weekly, that look at all of the skills that we have built across the agents and apply lessons learned to those skills. So, we have our PR drive or PR loop skill continually hardens, gets better, and we keep all of those skills as prompts, and we keep them in the repo as well, right? So they're constantly hardened. One of the nice things that we've seen, especially with Codacy and the new AI capabilities, is it's now looking at our skills files and our prompts and hardening those as well with best practices, which has made them even better, right? So it's this recursive betterment of feedback from external systems back into our internal system, and then sort of moving on to the next thing. So that's the loops in a nutshell. And there's also a number of things that we've learned along the way when we look at the cost of running this. It can get very expensive if you're running through 7 or 8 rounds of PR feedback. So post tool use hooks now, pre-commit hooks, pre-push hooks, all of that kind of stuff to get as much information from CLIs as possible before it has to go to a PR with that level of feedback. It's also more time intensive to pull it from a PR. You have to wait for all those reviews to come in, although it's not that long. Then pull them down, do it, push it, and then every edit and push is another set of those hooks, right? So you exponentially have a longer tail of work. So the more we can push into the agent at build time, the less we have to do correcting up front.
Great. And so one of the things that came up in a previous conversation we had was that you pulled CodeRabbit out of those pre-push hooks. And that was, from our understanding, was because Verity existed. So is that right? What earned Verity that spot?
Yeah, so I was very excited, when I saw the Verity announcement. I don't know how soon, what customer level I was on from a number perspective, but I saw it one day and I was like, oh, we're adding this, and just as a personal perspective, I kind of live my life in beta, so yeah, I wasn't afraid to try it. The one thing, a key driver for pulling CodeRabbit out of the hooks was the amount of time for the review it took in the CLI would time out, right? And the agents didn't like it more than anything. And the Verity responses were a lot faster. And as we spoke and I dove into how you guys were building the knowledge graph and the context and things like that, and keeping it local as well as in your cloud, I really liked that approach. And it definitely offered value right out of the gate, and has continued to improve. And I think the speed of your implementation and your engineering and willingness to take feedback on what works, or the ways we work. I'm at any given time I'm running anywhere between 5 to 20 plus work trees at a time across multiple machines, as well as cloud agents. The ability to separate those conversations, but also get feedback across them, I think is huge. And we've seen the benefit of that.
And to be fair, you're the type of customer that there is essentially ideal to build for, because you also give great feedback. So thank you for that and for the kind words. One thing that we saw previously was that it's been catching a number of things. Obviously, we've been fine-tuning, and there's still some false positives going around that we're trying very hard to reduce. Can you tell us about anything that it caught early on that comes to mind? Anything that was valuable to you?
Yeah, I mean, a number of things, right? And especially as it was learning, it was kind of interesting to watch. I'll have multiple conversations, sometimes in the same work tree or repo going on, because I'll have, say I'm in my dev branch and I'm just asking a question. And then I have another work tree in the same branch doing work. It would get confused and be like, hey, blah, 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 blah. But, there was early days before there was kind of the work tree separation that you guys have put in. I had 2 work trees running, and it had thrown a false positive on one that had stopped, and a pretty lengthy explanation. And the agent came back and said, hey, this is a false positive, but 2 of the things you said are actually accurate, and I need to go fix those. So even though it had thrown a false positive because it was from a conversation, a different conversation, the 2 agents were working on adjacent topics, but it applied across both levels of development. So getting that feedback to the agent much, much closer to the time of implementation has been extremely valuable, and I think it's just allowed us to ramp our development speed even faster.
To be honest, this feedback that we've gotten, I think, a few days or a week ago about the separation and different types of sessions that could be happening in the same work tree, or different agents working in different Git work trees, has been forcing us to isolate these environments much better. So it's been so important to see this real usage and also real findings happening. So cool. So as we look more into loop engineering, you are definitely farther along than many other organizations are. From our perspectives and what we see, everyone is already dipping their toes in the loop engineering water, so to speak. I think you're already, having a race boat and really exploring uncharted waters. So with all the infrastructure and all the sophistication, what breaks first at the scale that you are today? What are the Achilles heel of the structure that you see today?
A couple things. Git and GitHub's capability to, and I think this has been kind of talked about at just the kind of the macro level, but Git and GitHub's ability to keep up with agentic deployment, merge queues, rebasing, that kind of stuff. I think that one is definitely something that breaks. Git hygiene is huge. Having, I just did a cleanup yesterday. I do it, daily, but I think I had like 65 work trees on my local Git because, an agent will just abandon one and won't clean it up properly or whatever, right? So adding that. I think the other piece is cost, right? Tokens are getting more and more expensive. And looking at how you optimize the cost of development at the speed that you need/want to go, I think is highly critical.
Makes sense. In your opinion, what does defense in depth mean when agents write most of the code?
I think it is a couple things. Multiple levels of feedback and specialized feedback, right? Very prescriptive security reviews, prescriptive quality reviews, performance reviews, also operationalizing the ops side of DevOps. So, one of the agents that I have running in the loop actually goes out and looks at error logs that are running in dev and in test and in our demo environments, and brings that feedback back into, hey, this is a performance issue. This is, warnings we're seeing in logs or errors we're seeing in logs. We have to go fix that. As we look at, across multiple tenants, and we look across, SaaS scale, aggregating those logs, but then also bringing that back into loop engineering and extrapolating kind of macro trends of what we're seeing is a big piece. Another piece that breaks is everybody is shipping so fast, and even the hyperscalers, right? So as capabilities, as well as bad actors and adversaries, right? So security, cloud performance, cloud architecture, those types of things still can't be fully offloaded to just pure agentic processes. Data design and I'll call it database design, if you will. I think still needs some human intelligence and more refinement. And those are things we're working to try to drive more agentically as well. But you still need to have a background in enterprise systems at scale, and I'll call it development best practices, not just code best practices, and operational best practices, right? So the other side of I'll call it loop engineering is loop operations, right? So what happens when you have an outage or something goes down or you need to roll back or those types of things, right? So applying um, greater pressure testing and air quotes chaos engineering into these loops, I think is something that's still very much a weakness.
Brilliant. And a final question from my side. For organizations that are now starting their loop engineering processes, agents, and rolling that out, potentially even creating new teams where they start from the get-go with agents running in loops, what tips and coaching would you offer them for them to start this journey? Because we see lots of organizations that are dumbfounded with all the potential decisions that they could be making, to get agents running in loops. So where did they start?
I think there's two pieces to this answer. One, I think, is personal. You, and especially leaders in this space, right, have to be personally curious and intellectually curious about driving or building a self-driving capability. Whether that means in your personal time you're playing with your own Hermes agent or OpenClaw or whatever it may be, and driving a self-improving agent that you understand, and taking those lessons learned and applying them at scale. I think that's the first part. The second part is, and I've said this long before AI, or what we call AI today, agentic AI. You can't manage what you don't measure, right? So telemetry is huge. We also apply the same type of loop engineering and agentic processes outside of code. So in our normal business practices around go-to-market, sales ops, portfolio ops, collateral creation, all those types of things. And we have multiple full plugins of skills and agents, and they're all instrumented. And every skill turn documents telemetry. There's a self-reflection aspect of it, and then there's a meta-reflection aspect of it. The other part of it is you can't be afraid of the new thing. For a while, I was very skeptical of what capabilities existed, open source repos, things like that. I've really started to adapt and adopt more capabilities that builders in the community have made. And they've made significant impact. Things like token optimization tools, the meta analysis tools, right? How are my skills and my agents running? And then just keeping up, right? Like Anthropic's pushing what, 2 dot releases a day, 4 days a week on Claude Code. I know probably once, twice a day, it's, slash release notes. What did they push? Because you have to, okay, there's a new feature. What does it do? They changed something. And the evolution of how you use the harnesses is part of that engineering practice. So you can't be afraid to look at what others are doing and learn from it, adapt to it. A lot of the things that we find in open source, we don't just take and slam it in there. We'll say, okay, what are the best parts of this that we can glean for our ecosystem? And then either build something similar that makes sense. The ideology of it makes sense, but the implementation didn't, or drop it in and say, hey, does this work? Does it not? And don't be afraid to say, hey, it didn't work, and then rip it out. We've done that with a number of skills and plugins as they've evolved. They were good for a while and something better came out, and we pulled those out and moved on to the next thing. And I think the last piece of this is there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to harnesses, models, tools. you have to find the right tool for the job. It's just like finding the right developer for the right skill set, right? You're not gonna, hire a web front end guy to go build, something in Rust that runs on Apple Metal, right? So there are tools that are better at certain things, and those change. But it comes back to being constantly intellectually curious about what the possibilities are and how do you apply them. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where Verity goes next. I just see so much opportunity for you there. Obviously, code is core to who you are, but when I look at how we do things outside of just code development in our business, and having a trusted enterprise knowledge graph that can span across users, I think is huge. And I think there's a lot of tools that are open source that they say they can do that, but you kind of have to stitch that together. Or there are tools that are, I'll call it full enterprise harnesses that have, memory and context capabilities, but having that as something that you can plug into the harness of your choice, I think is a huge differentiator for you guys, and I'm really excited to continue to watch you to build it and to implement across what we do.
Wonderful, and those are those mean a lot, because obviously in the early days this is pretty much still, there's a lot to be built. We've implemented logins this week because we wanted to have more and safer authentication. There's all these other elements. We have, for example, an engineer from NVIDIA that has a fleet of coding agents that login doesn't work for him. We need to implement headless logins for also for his fleet to operate well.
Yep.
Over time,
I need that too, by the way.
Of course, yeah. So that's coming soon, but for that we want to have a centralized dashboard that you can manage those keys, like environment keys that you can issue. And so in 2 weeks, we want to revamp the UI so you can log in with the same accounts, see everything running, and create tokens that you can put in CI/CD. So that's the plan. But I am 150% in agreement that the value that we have, ultimately, all these things, all these connections, they will be going to be commoditized. The value is in the knowledge base. So the more that we can provide mechanisms to extract knowledge, consolidate knowledge, let you add it, let you plug in from different perspectives, let you own that knowledge also, give you access to the knowledge. It's not ours, it's yours, right? And so the more that you do that, the better for us. But there's a lot of foundational things that we need to build in order for that to shine. I want to get to all of that in July and spend all of the rest of the year doing cost telemetry, connecting that with your linear to say, one thing I would love to say is this linear, I think I told you last time, linear ticket, linear issue or epic could cost up to this amount of tokens to help you estimate, but also knowledge. That's the thing that we want to be focusing on. So hang with us, please.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited.
So awesome. This is it. Thank you so much for taking the time. You're our first one of these short stories of testimonials and thought leadership. So thank you for being the first here. Please send us feedback, continue to do that, and we'll build for you. That's what we're going to be doing.
We'll do. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Cheers.